Hi, my name is Alex Kudash, and today I'm going to be presenting my presentation on racism in sports. Racism is a huge issue that is occurring in sports today, but it is also not only just in sports, but it is also a huge issue that is occurring in the world in general. So first, I'm going to be doing a little introduction of racism in sports. So the world of sports is a complex mixture of many elements that transcends the competitive nature of the sport itself. In the past and in today's society, social problems manifest themselves in different ways in the world of sports. Racism is a particularly bad problem in the world of sports. Being a student, we discover the heroes of our world, the people who paved the way for us, travel at their expense. Many people think that Lincoln really sacrificed his life for what he believes. Others may think of Dr. Martin Luther King, who ended his apartheid and racism in the world. You can also find examples in professional sports, like Jackie Robinson, who was censored for being the first black man to become a professional baseball player. Other examples of athletes breaking the color barrier could be Arthur Ashe in tennis, Jesse Owens in both college and Olympic track and field, or Fritz Polland in football. In spite of the trepidations of these heroes, we can say that racism is not over in sports. There is still a lot of racism in professional sports. Now I'm going to be giving a definition of racism. These are two definitions that I found from some of my resources that I used. So racism can be defined in many ways. According to Woods, the term racism means that race determines the characteristics and traits of human beings and racial differences that lead to the superiority of a particular race. However, Anderson defines racism as a change in racial prejudice through the exercise of power over racial groups, which are defined as inferior to the individuals and institutions that all cultures intentionally support or not. In both these definitions of racism, the person who is usually a victim of racism is usually a minority. The group is different from most in terms of language, skin color, or religion. Now I'm going to be talking about a case of this issue. In today's society and sports, racism is caused by the cause of this issue. So racism is caused by the lack of minority groups in managerial positions, I believe. Although African Americans have demonstrated unprecedented participation in soccer, men's and women's basketball, and track and field, the same isn't true for management, coaching, and other administrative opportunities. According to Wood, no matter which sport you participate, the consistency of success and performance of years of training is always a more accurate manifestation of training capacity. Over the years, the continued success of black coaches as leaders have been observed. In 1993 to 1994, Nolan Richardson was named University's Basketball Coach of the Year, and Dusty Baker was named National League Coach of the Year. And there's so many more examples if you read further. So basically, what I'm saying in this slide is that one of the causes of the issue is that there is not enough people, when you take athletes out of the occasion, all the management positions, there's not enough minority people made up of minority groups that are in these positions. If there was more people like this in these type of positions, they'd be able to understand the athletes more, and they'd be giving athletes who are part of a minority group more of a chance in sports. So an example and a consequence of racism is what I'm going to speak about next. So in one of the most recent events occurring in Sofia was the shameful racist scene overshadowing England's victory by defeating Bulgaria in the England Euro 2020s. So the first half of the game was temporarily interrupted twice after the British debut Tyrone Mings, which is a player from England, informed the officials about the abuse of him and his teammates from different places in the stadium. So after long discussions and in line with UEFA's anti-racism agreement, the crowd was warned about the consequence of their actions. Unfortunately, the actions from the UEFA anti-racism agreement was not enough to prevent the fans from stopping the racist chants and slurs they were doing. So ultimately, the England players decided that they weren't going to put up with this. So they literally left the field, walked off before the game even finished. This was a huge statement from the England players. And after the incident, the president of the Bulgarian Football Association, Borislav Mihalov, resigned from his position. This was a huge statement and a huge embarrassing moment for the president, because it was such an embarrassing moment for him, knowing that the fans that are part of his organization let him down and showed racism, which he doesn't condemn. So ultimately, the huge consequence of this situation was that the England players walked off the field and the president of the Bulgarian Football Association resigned. So now I'm going to be talking about how severe this issue is and why it's such an important social issue. So athletes around the world, I believe, shouldn't have to worry about social injustices impacting their playing career and their life in general, but unfortunately it does, and this is where the issue is. When we look at these kind of incidents, it's not hard to think of Jackie Robinson, who broke Major League Baseball's color barrier in 1947. Robinson was famously chosen to be the first black MLB player because Brooklyn Dodgers manager Branch Rickey believed Robinson wouldn't fight back when faced with the inevitable racism of teammates, opponents, and fans, among others. Robinson died of a heart attack in 1972 at age 53. Rachel Robinson, his wife, believes that the constant stress he was under contributed to his early death. So basically what his wife is saying, that the racism that he experienced throughout his career was so stressful to the point that that his heart attack was contributed to the fact that he was racially abused over and over throughout his career, which shows how severe this issue really is. Myrna Lashley, a psychiatry professor at McGill University, knows what it's like to be one of the people paving the way. Racism is one of the main social determinants of mental illness in black people, she explained, and internalizing it and having to develop coping mechanisms for it are simply unhealthy and wrong. So basically what she's saying is that the fact that minority groups have to learn to deal with it and learn to do things that other people don't have to do is just simply not fair, and it's simply affecting them mentally, emotionally, physically. It's impacting them, and that's why this issue is so important, because it really is having a huge impact on these players, these athletes, and everyone that's being racially abused in sports. So now I'm going to be talking about how athletes have an influence on this issue. So, as you might know, there has been a football player named by the name of Colin Kaepernick. Colin Kaepernick has been a huge influence on standing up for this issue and being a role model for all people experiencing racism. So, basically, in 2016, in the final preseason with his team before the start of a season, Kaepernick decided to kneel throughout the national anthem instead of standing up. So his actions provoked a storm of debate nationwide. Although many people think that the actions indicate respect, others believe that this is a protest against the ethnic injustice that is happening around the world. Although Kaepernick is no longer a professional athlete, he is still the center of attention. Last year, Nike announced a new advertisement campaign to celebrate the 30th anniversary of the slogan, "Just Do It." The ad has a close-up photo of Kaepernick's face and says, "Believe in something, even if it means sacrificing everything." So I think this is a very strong statement, and it shows how devoted and how amazing Colin Kaepernick was in playing a huge role in helping with racial injustice. Of course, when you really look back at it, the fact that he was able to sacrifice his career just because of racial injustice shows how sad it is, that something like this still exists. But it also shows how passionate Colin was about it, because he was able to put his career to the side for something that means more to him. On top of Colin Kaepernick, there are other athletes such as Carmelo Anthony, LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, Chris Paul, who all convey the same message and are have very strong opinions when it comes to racial abuse and social injustice. Their influence greatly helps people realize that racist behavior is incredible in the country growing, so it is necessary to act in this regard. So clearly, you can see that some of these big athletes are having a huge influence on this issue, and together when partner up with when athletes partner up together to stand up for social injustice, they can make a huge impact and influence on this issue. So now I'm going to be talking about social media's impact and influence. So the internet is often described as a safe space in which users can express their thoughts anonymously. This anonymity makes users feel secure, but also separates them from victims. They are protected from the hurt or anger their posts might cause. People are using social media as an easy access to communicate racial slurs without any consequences. Athletes are still feeling the discrimination of a tweet or a post just as much as a regular racial chant from the stands in an arena. So basically what I'm saying here is that just because you are not saying something racist to someone face to face doesn't mean that it's still doesn't mean that it's not racist. If you're behind a screen and you're typing something and you post something that is racist, it is still racist, and it still can impact an athlete the same way as if you told it to his face. So now when looking at the job social networks are doing, I think that although they still need to do more, I think they are slowly making the right progression. When I look into what things they were able to do, I see that their Twitter introduced an easy-to-use system for reporting abusive messages. Facebook has also done something similar. But definitely, once again, as I said earlier, I definitely believe that there's still improvement and there is still necessary growth. I think that once a report has been sent out, moderators should judge whether the aggravated party is being abused or being too sensitive. And it's a very big job. Around 100 hours of footage is uploaded to YouTube every minute, and Instagram users alone post around 55 million posts a day. That really leaves one moderator a matter of seconds to make historical, contextual, political, and social judgments about the content. One way to reduce the number of racial posts would be to include an algorithm which highlights any potentially offensive language before the status or comment is sent. When something like this happens, the user should have one final chance to pause for a second and consider whether or not they want to post it. And if they do, then they have to face the consequences of their post. So now I'm going to be talking about our responsibility to help stop this issue. I think there are ways in which we can take to eradicate, if not lessen, the amount of racism in sports, which include the two most important things, which I think is teamwork and creating relationships. When we work together, players can combat the racial remarks. Also, there should be a new framework for thinking. People should be interacting with diverse groups of individuals in sports, and they should be faced with the need to challenge previous harmful perceptions of other groups. As social media life negatively affects the general public, it also has some positive perspectives that can be used to spread messages for halting racism in sports. Individuals with the right mindsets and good considerations can utilize social media life to spread messages that can prevent racism, and it could also spread positive images. It is extremely significant for the general public to take the positive messages and then push ahead and stop racial separation in the general public. Until individuals alter their perspectives with respect to the racial segregation, there can't be any answers for this issue. Everything relies upon the mindset of individuals and how they use their mindset to work together and communicate with others to improve the general idea throughout the public of the general idea regarding racism in the public's eye. Now I'm going to be providing a few examples of specific future implications that I think need to be put in to minimize the issue. So I think we need to adopt a national framework agreement outlining the tasks and responsibilities of each person. We should invite local authorities to organize sport-related outreach activities, bringing together people from different backgrounds. We should invite sports federations and sport clubs to take measures to attract supporters of different minority backgrounds to sport events. We should remind athletes and coaches to abstain from racist behaviors in all circumstances. We should encourage supporter organizations to adopt supporter charters containing anti-racism clauses. We should encourage sponsors and the advertising industry to avoid giving a stereotyped picture of athletes from minority backgrounds. And we should promote exchange of good practices through the creation of a Good Practice Award for combating racism and racial discrimination in sports. So to conclude, I believe that sports, the fact that sports have been played is a huge role to help fight against racism. sports can be either used as something positively to help eliminate racism in general, or sports can be a gateway to keep increasing racism in this world. I think that considerable progress has been made in reducing racial discrimination, but unethical behavior continues to exist without a doubt. Everyone, including the fans, the media, social networks, sport organizations, players, owners, managers, coaches, and so on, have a huge role to further the progression of eliminating racism. At the end of the day, we all need to act in unity and consider each other the same in everyone's eyes, so that equality becomes mandatory no matter what skin color you are, no matter where you come from, no matter what your background is, no matter what language you speak. It doesn't matter. We all have to consider each other equal. Here you will find the references that I used to create my presentation. The more references are here. And yeah, that's all. Thank you for listening to my presentation. I hope I was able to create some insight onto this issue, and I hope my presentation was very informative and interesting to listen to. Thank you for listening to my presentation.